If you haven't gotten a chance to subscribe to my channel yet, I really encourage you to do that. I'm almost to 100 subscribers, which for some people is not a big deal, but for me is a super big deal, and I would love to hit that number before the end of 2020. To blow up a balloon before, where you're trying and it's so hard, but then just when you think you'd want to give up because you have nothing more to give and this stupid balloon is not expanding, all of a sudden you have that breakthrough moment and it starts to blow up like it should. But you don't want to go too big because you might explode it. So you get a little bit of air and then you kind of release it. And then you get a little bit more air and then you release it. And then you get a little bit more air, and with every stretching, that balloon expands bigger and bigger and bigger until it's fully blown up. Something that when you very first started, you thought might not even be possible. Because sometimes our own life is like that. When we come up against difficult or uncomfortable things that cause us tension or friction. I know in this time, in this last year, and a lot of things that have come up against our viewpoints and our value systems. For many people, those are incredibly uncomfortable conversations. Those are the things that you start to blow up the balloon and immediately it feels like it's too much. Give up in that moment. If in that moment of tension and difficulty, you pull back, it's certainly easier, but you never push through to that point of allowing the balloon to do what the balloon was designed to do. But also, we have to be cautious not to just blast on through, because I'm sure you've had that experience too, where you just grab a balloon and you're blowing every amount of air you've got, and then it just pops, right? We have to recognize that there is a balance in that. And the amazing thing when you live life with Jesus is that he knows exactly what that perfect balance is. Incredibly hard to willingly put your views and your values under a microscope, to hold them with an open hand and to say, perhaps the way that I have grown up, perhaps the way that I view the world is not all accurate. I'm not afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. In fact, I kind of like it at times. But there's even a difference there in entering into uncomfortable conversations and really choosing to challenge my viewpoints. Because if we understand race and privilege and power in our country, in the systems that exist in our country, in order for a group with less power and less privilege to experience equality, another group has to give it up. And if you're in the group who has it, it's really hard to choose to give some of that up. And if we as people, as white people, are not willing to take some time to be introspective, to recognize your own biases, to see where you have privilege because of the color of your skin. Taking the time this summer while we've been staying at home and social distancing to really dig in, to ask the hard questions, to look back on circumstances and situations in my life where I have been confronted by racism, to really unpack my feelings, understand where my biases lie, and to listen to people in my life who have this lived experience. Because it's one thing to read a book or listen to a podcast or even understand things like institutional and systemic racism. Those are important things for us to understand. But we have to listen to people. We have to be willing to be quiet, which is really hard for some of us. And I'm not just talking about quieting our mouths, but quieting our spirit, not trying to defend or to think up an excuse or to try to have a comeback to or to have another question, but to just listen, to absorb somebody else's experience, because it changes you. It's one thing to hear about on the news what people are thinking. It's a whole other thing to hear somebody talk about how when they get dressed to go to the grocery store, they get dressed as if they're going to work, that they feel the need to put on professional attire and not sweatpants or sweatshirts so that they don't get followed around at the grocery store. You know what? I do that all the freaking time. I go grocery shopping in my sweats all the time, and I have never thought twice about it. Or think about the way that I dress and how that might impact somebody being more suspicious of me. But so many other things that happen on a daily basis that I don't have to consider that other people do. And that's not okay. Things change when we're willing to get uncomfortable, allow ourselves to be stretched, not stretched to the breaking point. And I think this is important when we engage in conversation, when we invite people in. That is a responsibility that we have, to invite people in to have those hard conversations, but we have to be aware and careful about how we do it. I can't just go full force into telling every white person I interact with that they have a wrong viewpoint, because one, I don't know if they have a wrong viewpoint if I don't stop to actually listen to them. And two, nobody responds well when they're being accused or put on the defense. But I cannot shy away from those conversations just because they make me uncomfortable, right? That's like the balloon at the beginning of what I was talking about, that you push and you push and you push and you push and oh, it's just too hard, I can't do it anymore. Don't be that person. Recognize that your capacity to deal with uncomfortable will expand as you push. That God created us for love, that God created us for relationship, and relationship isn't always easy. In fact, it's often not easy. But if we want to love people well, we have to understand people. We have to listen. We have to be willing to be wrong. Being willing to be wrong. Being willing to swallow your pride a little bit, and maybe a lot of it. It's not one I'm good at. Book Braving the Wilderness, Brene Brown talks about how we have, as a society, we have moved more towards homogenous communities, where you choose to live in a place with people who think like you and act like you, right? There are red states and there are blue states. There are conservative places and there are liberal places. We naturally gravitate to be around things that are comfortable. But as we do that, we actually create more intolerance. Because while our immediate surroundings feel more comfortable and more insulated, by doing that, we create a bigger us and them divide. It's no longer my neighbor thinks differently, but I know my neighbor, and my neighbor babysat for me, and I know their heart, so though they think differently, they're not an evil person. When the them is far away and is an unknown and is anonymous on the internet or whatever, it's a lot easier to judge and hate and get angry with, to not even want to listen to somebody else's viewpoint. Who are the voices that are speaking into your life? What are the people? Who are the people? What are the communities that you're surrounding yourself with? If they all look like you, think like you, talk like you, act like you, could I suggest that maybe you're not positioning yourself well for growth? That perhaps the Lord is inviting you into something deeper and richer and fuller of an experience? Look at your friend list on Facebook. Look at who you are following on Instagram. You aren't having conversations about race at home. You need to be. We can no longer afford to stay silent. You know, one of the arguments I hear a lot of times is, well, that happened a long time ago, so why do we need to keep talking about it? In scripture, there are tons of times where it talks about generations upon generations. There are things that are generational that we have to atone for, that we have to account for, that impact us. Don't get caught up in that lie that says it happened a long time ago. It wasn't me. I'm not directly being racist. Well, we all have a little bit of that in us, I think. We'll have a little bit of bias. We're people, hurt. And when we are hurt by others or hurt by institutions or hurt by things, we create walls. Time to start tearing down those walls, and those begin with relational conversations. Listen to what people are saying. Stay closely aligned with the Lord, because He is not going to allow you to break, but see where He's inviting you into opportunity to be stretched. Don't shy away from it. Don't run from it. Don't try to move over it or past it too quickly. Do the work. If we want this country to be better, if we want this world to be better, we have to acknowledge the hurts that other people are experiencing. We have to acknowledge the hurts that we have helped inflict, we personally, or we, the community group that we are a part of. The way that the church has engaged in incredibly racist things. That's something we, as a Christian community, have to grapple with. That's something that I, as somebody who chooses to follow Jesus in America, I have to grapple with. Every one of those opportunities has been a moment where we can choose to step back, choose to say, I'm fine with my balloon being the size that it is, or we can press in and allow ourselves to be stretched a little bit more. I've linked some resources down below. I try not to ever recommend something that I haven't read or listened or watched myself, and I recommend you read them with somebody, but allow yourself to do the work. We've got time, we're still in quarantine. Amazon delivers. Get some books, get in conversation with people, and listen, truly listen. Listen to their lived experience. We can be so quick to generalize and stereotype and broad stroke things, but listen to people's experience. It changes you. Be changed.